The storm raged across Nova Terra's capital city, sheets of purple rain hammering against the windows of Master James Harrison's dojo. The decorated martial arts instructor stood at the entrance, watching rivulets of water cascade down the transparent aluminum panels. Even after 5 years on this alien world, Earth's former colony still held surprises. A flash of movement caught his attention, something more than just wind-blown debris. Through the downpour, he spotted a figure stumbling through the empty streets. The being moved with an unusual gait, clearly struggling against both the weather and their own body. James grabbed his weather shield and stepped out into the storm. As he drew closer, he realized it was a young celestial, one of the native species of Nova Terra. Her crystalline skin held a pale blue tinge, but what immediately struck him was how her limbs seemed to grow at odd angles, twisting in ways that must have made every movement a challenge. "You shouldn't be out in this weather," he called out, holding up his shield to protect them both from the caustic rain. The celestial startled, nearly losing her balance. Up close, he could see the evidence of recent injuries, not from the rain, but from fists and boots. "I'm fine," she responded in perfect standard, though her voice wavered. "I don't need human charity." "Not charity," James replied calmly. "Basic decency. I'm James Harrison. My dojo is right there, and I have medical supplies." She studied him with eyes that seemed to hold galaxies within them, a trademark of her species. Finally, she nodded. "Naira," she offered. "My name is Naira." Inside the dojo, James quickly gathered first aid supplies while Naira stood awkwardly in the entrance, careful not to drip on the training mats. He noticed how she unconsciously shifted into a defensive stance, one that accommodated her unique physiology. "You've had some training," he observed, returning with bandages and antiseptic. "My father." She paused, pain flickering across her features. "He believed in being prepared. Before he died." James worked in silence, cleaning the cuts and bruises. "These weren't from today," he noted. The injuries told a story of repeated abuse. "Some people don't appreciate seeing a defective celestial in their neighborhood," Naira said bitterly. "Especially one trying to continue her father's business. Your condition, you were born with it? Crystalline flux syndrome. Rare among my people. It affects how our mineral-based biology develops." She flexed one twisted arm. "Most families would have." She trailed off. "But your father didn't," James finished softly. "No. He taught me to be strong, to adapt. But since he passed." She straightened suddenly, pulling away. "I should go. Thank you for your help." "Wait." James stood, moving to the wall where his certifications hung. Among them was a specialized teaching credential. "I've worked with students with various physical challenges. Your father taught you basics, but I could help you develop techniques suited to your unique abilities." Naira's expression hardened. "I don't need pity training." "This isn't pity," James said firmly. "I've watched how you move. You've already started adapting standard forms to work with your body instead of against it. That takes insight. Intelligence. With proper training, you could develop something entirely new." She glanced around the dojo, lingering on the diverse group photos showing humans and aliens training together. "Your other students wouldn't object?" "My dojo, my rules. First lessons free." He smiled. "Though I could use help maintaining the place, if you're interested in working off future lessons." Naira was quiet for a long moment, galaxies swirling in her eyes. Finally, she bowed, not the awkward gesture of someone copying a human custom, but the smooth movement of a trained martial artist. "When do we start, Master Harrison?" James returned the bow. "Welcome to the dojo, student Naira." As they began their first lesson, neither could have predicted how their lives would intertwine, nor how their partnership would challenge not just physical limitations, but the prejudices of two species. The storm outside continued to rage, but within the dojo, something remarkable was taking root, a connection that would change them both forever. Dawn broke over Nova Terra's crystalline spires as Naira arrived at the dojo for her third week of training. She paused at the entrance, watching Master Harrison demonstrate a complex kata to a group of advanced students. His movements flowed like water, each stance transitioning seamlessly into the next. The other students had grown accustomed to her presence, though some still cast curious glances at her crystalline limbs. Among them was Vax, a towering Andromedian whose 4 arms made him naturally adept at the martial arts. He had been the first to welcome her, even offering to spar during practice sessions. "Your form is improving," James said as she entered, not breaking his rhythm. "I can hear the difference in your footwork." Naira smiled despite herself. It was true, in just weeks, she had learned to turn her unusual balance into an advantage. Where others needed to shift their weight traditionally, she could utilize her unique center of gravity to create unexpected movements. "Master Harrison," called a voice from the doorway. A well-dressed human woman stood there, her corporate insignia identifying her as part of Nova Terra's business council. "A word, please?" James bowed to his students and stepped aside with the visitor. Though they spoke in hushed tones, Naira's sensitive hearing caught fragments, reputation to consider. And, certain standards. Her crystalline structure dimmed slightly, she knew what this was about. The other students pretended to focus on their practice, but she could feel their attention shifting between her and the conversation. James's voice carried clearly, "My dojo is open to all who wish to learn. That's not negotiable." The woman left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. James returned to the class as if nothing had happened, but Naira noticed the slight tension in his shoulders. Later, as she helped clean the training mats, she found the courage to ask, "Why do you defend me? It would be easier to just..." "To just what?" James interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. "Turn away someone with genuine passion for the art? Someone who's already proving traditional limitations don't define capability?" He picked up a practice staff, testing its weight. "Watch this." He moved through a complex series of strikes and blocks, then handed her the staff. "Now you try." Naira gripped the weapon, her crystalline fingers adjusting to find the right balance. She began the sequence, her twisted limbs forcing her to modify each movement. Where James had used standard angles, she created new ones, her body flowing in ways that seemed to defy conventional physics. "See?" James said, smiling. "Different, but just as effective, maybe more so, because no one would expect it." He stepped closer, adjusting her grip slightly. "You're not just learning the art, Naira. You're expanding it." The warmth of his hands lingered even after he stepped away. Naira forced herself to focus on the staff movements, trying to ignore how her crystalline structure had brightened at his touch. As weeks turned into months, Naira's progress exceeded even James's expectations. She developed her own style, incorporating her unique physiology into traditional forms in ways that amazed both students and visiting masters. The whispers about her condition didn't stop, but they changed from derision to curiosity. One evening, as storm clouds gathered again outside, James found her practicing alone in the dojo. She moved through the forms they'd created together, her crystalline body catching the fading light in ways that made each movement seem to flow into the next like living art. "Your father would be proud," he said softly. Naira completed her sequence before turning to him. "I'm not sure. Everything I'm learning, it's so different from traditional celestial arts. Growth often means moving beyond tradition." James stepped onto the mat. "Show me that last sequence again." They moved through the form together, James matching her adapted style while she incorporated elements of his traditional technique. Their training sessions had developed an almost intimate quality, two artists collaborating to create something entirely new. The business council isn't the only one concerned about your presence here, James said as they finished. I've received warnings from some traditional dojos. They think I'm diluting the art. Naira's structure dimmed. I could leave. Find somewhere else. No, James said firmly, catching her hand. The touch sent sparkles through her crystalline skin. What we're creating here is important. Not just for you or me, but for everyone who's ever been told they don't belong. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. James cleared his throat and stepped back, maintaining professional distance. Besides, who else would help me keep this place so spotless? Naira laughed, the sound like chimes in the wind. You'd be lost without me. As they cleaned up for the evening, both were acutely aware of how their relationship was shifting, evolving into something neither had expected. The boundaries between master and student, human and celestial, were beginning to blur. And in the growing darkness outside, forces were gathering that would soon test not just their skills, but the very nature of their bond. The announcement of the Intercolony Martial Arts Tournament sent ripples of excitement through Nova Terra's martial arts community. James found Naira studying the holographic notice that morning, her crystalline form reflecting the flickering light. You should enter, he said, catching her by surprise. The tournament? Naira's crystalline features shifted in what he'd learned was disbelief. Against traditional martial artists? Against anyone who dares face you. James activated the training simulator. Your technique is ready. More than ready. The past months had transformed Naira. Where once her movements had been uncertain, now she flowed like liquid crystal. Her unique physiology, once seen as a limitation, had become the foundation of a revolutionary fighting style that combined traditional forms with impossible angles and unexpected transitions. The other masters won't accept it, she said, but her tone held a note of consideration. They'll say I'm making a mockery of their traditions. Then show them the beauty in evolution. James programmed a challenging sequence. Show them that true martial arts adapt and grow. Their training intensified. James pushed Naira harder than ever, and she responded with determination that took his breath away. During their sparring sessions, the line between teacher and student often blurred. They were partners now, each learning from the other. The day before tournament registration closed, Naira finally made her decision. As she completed the entry forms, whispers spread through the martial arts community. Some were outraged, others intrigued. James weathered the criticism with quiet confidence, knowing what his student was capable of. The tournament arena was packed on opening day. Competitors from across the colonies filled the preparation areas, many stopping to stare at Naira as she warmed up. James stood nearby, a steady presence as she moved through her forms. Remember, he said softly, they expect you to fight like them. Your strength is that you don't. Her first match drew a larger crowd than usual. Her opponent, a skilled human practitioner, clearly expected an easy victory. The surprise on his face when Naira flowed around his attacks like living mercury was matched only by the audience's gasps of amazement. Match after match, Naira advanced through the rankings. Her unusual style caught many opponents off guard, but it was more than just surprise. She had developed something entirely new, a perfect fusion of traditional discipline and innovative adaptation. The semi-finals brought her face to face with Krell, a renowned master from the Centauri colonies. His cybernetically enhanced body made him a fearsome opponent, and his sneer when he saw Naira spoke volumes about his opinion of her presence in the tournament. "This is no place for curiosities," he said loudly as they took their positions. James felt his fists clench, but Naira's voice rang out clear and confident, "Then perhaps you should withdraw." The match that followed would be talked about for years to come. Krell's enhanced strength and speed met Naira's fluid adaptability in a display that had the audience on their feet. Where he struck with brutal force, she redirected and flowed. When he pressed forward, she used angles that seemed to deny physics itself. The winning point came when Krell, frustrated by his inability to land a solid hit, overextended. Naira moved in a way that seemed to fold space itself, her crystalline form catching the arena lights as she turned his own momentum against him. The impact of his body hitting the mat echoed through the stunned arena. In the silence that followed, Naira helped her fallen opponent up, a gesture of respect that spoke volumes. The audience erupted in applause, and even Krell managed a grudging bow of acknowledgement. That evening, after the semi-final celebrations had died down, James found Naira in the tournament garden, her crystalline form softly glowing in the twilight. "You've changed everything," he said, sitting beside her. "They're already calling your style, crystal form." "We changed everything," she corrected, turning to face him. "I wouldn't be here without you believing in me." The air between them felt charged with unspoken words. James was acutely aware of how her glow had intensified, how the space between them seemed to shrink without either moving. "Naira," he began, but she placed a crystalline finger against his lips. "I know the rules," she said softly. "A master and student cannot." She trailed off, her form dimming slightly. "The finals are tomorrow," James replied, carefully taking her hand from his lips but not letting it go. "After that, you'll be a master in your own right." The hope that flickered across her features was like starlight through crystal. But before either could say more, a tournament official appeared with urgent news: there had been an incident. Several dojos had withdrawn in protest of Naira's advancement to the finals, and rumors of threats were circulating. As they rushed to deal with the crisis, both knew that their relationship, and everything they'd built together, was about to face its greatest test. The true challenge wouldn't be in the tournament ring, but in defending their vision of a martial art that embraced difference and celebrated evolution. The final day of the tournament would bring more than just a competition. It would be a statement about change, about acceptance, and about the power of seeing beyond limitations to the true strength that lies within. The morning of the tournament finals dawned with an unsettling quiet. James arrived at the arena early to find the entrance defaced with holographic graffiti, "Preserve pure traditions," floating in angry red letters. He was erasing it when Naira arrived, her crystalline form dulled with concern. "They broke into the dojo last night," she said without preamble. "Training equipment destroyed, practice mats slashed. The security recordings were wiped." James's jaw tightened. The vandalism wasn't random, it was a message. "Are you sure you want to go through with the finals?" Naira's form brightened with determination. "If I withdraw, they win. Everything we've worked for, everything we've proven about adaptation and growth, it would all be dismissed." Before James could respond, his community chimed with an urgent message. The tournament committee had called an emergency meeting. Traditional masters from across the colonies were demanding Naira's disqualification, claiming her unique physiology and adapted style gave her an unfair advantage. "The irony," Naira said bitterly as they hurried to the meeting, "they never considered my condition an advantage before." The committee chamber was tense with unspoken hostility. Master Rand, a prominent traditionalist, stood to speak. "This tournament celebrates centuries of martial arts tradition. Allowing unorthodox modifications threatens the very essence of our disciplines." "Martial arts have always evolved," James countered, standing. "Every great master in history adapted their art to new circumstances, new challenges. What we're seeing here isn't a corruption of tradition, it's the natural progression of the art itself." The debate raged for hours. Finally, the committee reached a decision: Naira would be allowed to compete, but under unprecedented scrutiny. Any move deemed physically impossible by traditional standards would result in immediate disqualification. As they left the chamber, James noticed Naira's troubled expression. "They're hoping you'll slip up. Use your natural abilities too obviously." "Then I'll win within their limitations," she said, but her voice wavered slightly. "I just..." I never thought proving myself would mean denying part of who I am. James stopped, turning to face her. Listen to me. Your strength isn't in your crystalline form or your adapted moves. It's in your spirit, your ability to overcome every obstacle they put in your path. Their eyes met, and the air between them crackled with unspoken emotions. Naira's form brightened, small rainbows dancing across her surface. James, I. A sudden explosion rocked the arena, cutting her off. Smoke billowed from the training area, and panicked shouts filled the air. They rushed toward the chaos, finding several competitors trapped beneath fallen equipment. Without hesitation, Naira and James moved in perfect sync. Her unique abilities allowed her to slip through gaps too narrow for others, while his strength helped clear debris. Together, they rescued the trapped athletes before emergency services arrived. As the smoke cleared, James noticed a small device among the wreckage, a professional-grade explosive, not some amateur's work. This wasn't just vandalism, it was a calculated attack. Later that evening, as they helped with the cleanup, Master Rand approached them. His expression was troubled. I may have been hasty in my judgment, he admitted. Your actions today demonstrated the true spirit of martial arts, protecting others, regardless of style or tradition. But his next words carried a warning. However, not everyone is as willing to change. There are those who see your partnership as a threat to everything they've built. Be careful. That night, James insisted on walking Naira home. The streets of Nova Terra were eerily empty, their footsteps echoing off crystalline buildings. Neither spoke of the almost moment they'd shared before the explosion, but its memory hung between them like an unfinished symphony. Something bigger is coming, Naira said finally, breaking the silence. This isn't just about the tournament anymore, is it? James shook his head. I think we've stumbled onto something deeper, a resistance to change that goes beyond martial arts. But whatever comes next. He turned to her, his expression intense. We face it together. Naira's crystalline hand found his, their fingers intertwining. Together, she agreed softly. They stood there for a moment, the line between master and student, human and celestial, blurring into something new and undefined. Tomorrow would bring the tournament finals and whatever challenges their opponents had planned. But for now, in the quiet of the Nova Terra night, they found strength in their connection, a bond that transcended physical forms and traditional boundaries. As James watched Naira enter her home, he made a silent vow. Whatever forces were aligning against them, whatever prejudices they faced, he would protect not just his student, but the future she represented, a future where difference wasn't just accepted, but celebrated as a source of strength. The final battle would test more than their martial skills. It would challenge their convictions, their trust in each other, and the very future of their art. But as James walked back through the quiet streets, he felt a quiet confidence. Together, they had already proven that the strongest bonds are forged in the face of adversity, and that true power comes not from tradition, but from the courage to forge new paths. The day of the tournament finals arrived with a sense of impending storm. James paced the preparation area, watching Naira warm up under the scrutinizing eyes of the committee's observers. Her crystalline form moved with fluid grace, each motion precisely calculated to stay within the committee's strict limitations. Master Harrison. The voice belonged to Master Rand, who approached with unusual urgency. I've discovered something. The attacks, they're not just about tradition. There's a group called the Purist Coalition. They've been using the tournament as cover for something bigger. Before he could elaborate, alarms blared throughout the arena. Security barriers slammed down, trapping thousands of spectators inside. Holographic screens flickered to life, displaying a masked figure. For too long, we've watched our sacred traditions be corrupted, the figure announced. Today, we cleanse the impurity from our midst. Every exit is rigged. Any attempt at evacuation will trigger the explosives. James's eyes met Naira's across the room. In that moment, they both understood, the tournament had never been the real target. It was merely a stage for a larger demonstration of intolerance. "They're in the maintenance tunnels," Rand said quickly. "My sources confirmed it. But the security systems are designed for traditional access patterns," Naira finished, her crystalline structure brightening with sudden purpose. "But I can move differently." James stepped forward. "We do this together." They slipped away from the panic in the main arena, making their way to the maintenance access points. Naira's unique physiology allowed her to navigate passages that would have stopped others, while James's experience helped them avoid security measures. "The main control hub is 2 levels down," Rand guided them through their comm units. "But be warned, they'll be expecting resistance." They encountered the first group of purists at a junction. The fighters were skilled traditionalists, their movements precise and lethal. But they weren't prepared for Naira's evolved style, nor for how seamlessly she and James fought together. "Abomination," one spat at Naira. "You corrupt everything you touch." "No," she replied, her form glowing with intensity. "I transform it. I make it stronger." She moved like liquid light, her adapted techniques flowing around their rigid forms. James watched her back, their movements synchronized through months of training together. They weren't master and student now, but partners in the truest sense. They fought their way deeper into the facility, disarming explosives as they went. But at the main control hub, they found the masked leader waiting with elite fighters. "How fitting," he sneered, removing his mask to reveal a face James recognized, Master Wei, one of the most respected traditional teachers in the colonies. The human who betrayed his heritage and the crystal freak who seduced him away from true tradition. "You're wrong," James said firmly. "Tradition without growth is just stagnation. Naira hasn't corrupted anything, she's shown us how to evolve, how to become stronger by embracing difference." The fight that followed would be remembered as legendary. Wei's followers attacked with all the skill centuries of tradition could impart, but James and Naira moved as one. Where traditional forms met crystal fluidity, where human determination merged with celestial grace, something new was born. Naira's crystalline form caught the emergency lights, sending rainbow refractions across the walls as she flowed through forms that defied conventional physics. James's techniques, enhanced by everything he'd learned from teaching her, complemented her movements perfectly. The final confrontation came down to Wei himself, his mastery of traditional forms against their unified innovation. "You can't beat centuries of perfection with mutation," he snarled. "Watch us," Naira replied. She and James moved in perfect synchronization, their separate styles merging into something that was neither human nor celestial, neither traditional or radical, but transcendent. Wei never stood a chance. As security forces finally broke through to arrest the purists, James and Naira stood together in the aftermath. The tournament committee, led by Master Rand, approached them. "The finals are cancelled," Rand announced, "but the committee has reached a decision." He bowed deeply to Naira. "We recognize not just your skill, but your contribution to the evolution of our art. The title of Master is yours, earned not despite your differences, but because of how you've shown us all a new way forward." Later, as Nova Terra's 3 moons rose over the city, James found Naira in their dojo, no longer master and student, but equals. She was moving through a kata they had created together, her crystalline form luminescent in the twilight. "So," he said softly, "what does a newly recognized master plan to do next?" Naira completed her form before turning to him. "I thought perhaps, a partnership." Her crystalline features shifted in what he now recognized as nervousness. The dojo could benefit from having 2 masters, each bringing their own perspective. James stepped closer, drawn by the rainbow lights dancing across her surface. "Just the dojo?" "No," she whispered, her hand finding his. "Not just the dojo." As they came together, their forms moving in perfect harmony, the last barriers between them dissolved. They had created something unprecedented, in their art, in their teaching, and in their hearts. Their kiss, when it finally happened, felt like the natural conclusion to a form they had been practicing all along. Outside, the lights of Nova Terra sparkled like distant stars, witnessing the birth of something new, a future where difference wasn't just accepted, but celebrated, where tradition and innovation danced together, and where love proved stronger than any limitation. In the end, their story would be told not just as a romance between human and celestial, but as proof that the greatest strength comes from embracing what makes us unique, and that the purest tradition of all is the courage to forge new paths together.